Ian Rappaport reports that Shedeur Sanders will not participate in any drills at the NFL Combine. He added that Sanders is more focused on his team interviews to make a good impression on teams on who he is going to speak in person. Sanders has a meeting scheduled with teams beginning tomorrow and is not expected to restrict teams for his interviews. Sanders will throw at his Colorado Pro Day next month, saying he will be more comfortable in more familiar surroundings. Deion Sanders says him playing with 4 different offensive coordinators in college will prepare him for the NFL level. Sanders led college football with a 74% completion percentage last year and his 71.8% since joining Colorado in college football, record of 2-year span. The top 3 pick in last year's draft, Caleb Williams, Jaden Daniels, and Drake May, also did not throw at the Combine. You know, I think Shedeur Sanders is a very interesting cat. Okay, and it's pretty simple. I know everybody's going to attack me on social media when I say this, but I do not believe Shedeur Sanders should be a top 10 pick. I really don't. I think he has a quality in him as far as standing in the pocket and taking a beating. I also believe he holds the ball too long, and as an NFL quarterback, if you do that, you're going to get killed. This is the NFL level. This isn't Colorado. You're not playing against second-tier defenses, and if you look at what he did last year, and I'll say this nice and fairly, who did he beat in the top 25 last year? How many teams, as far as defensively, did he beat in the top 25 last year? And the answer would probably tell you why I don't think he's going to be as good a quarterback in the NFL. But the fact is, Deion Sanders is going to come out and he's going to stick up for his son. He obviously thinks his son is going to be a quality quarterback in the league. Every father will say that about his son. And I'm not taking shots at Deion Sanders, even though everybody thinks that. I don't like him. I hate him. I don't appreciate him going out there and throwing and trying to lead his superstar players like his son or even Travis Hunter and say that these guys are going to be the best at their position in the league. The fact is, when I look at Shedeur Sanders, he's got a quality arm, but he holds the ball too long and is as accurate as his completion percentage says he is. Who did he play defensively last year that can tell me or tell you that he can actually hold on to the ball and complete passes in the NFL? These defenses in the NFL are much more faster. They're going to get to the quarterback a lot faster. In college football, it usually takes a defensive lineman between 3.5 seconds to 3.8 seconds to get to the quarterback. In the NFL, if you're a good defense, 2 seconds at best. That means if Shedeur Sanders holds on to the ball as long as he usually does, he's going to get killed. And I look at the quality of his legs. And I know Deion Sanders says he's a good mobile quarterback. He's a quality mobile quarterback. He is not Cam Ward. He is not Jaden Daniels. He's not Lamar Jackson. When you don't have those qualities, even Kyler Murray, if you don't have those qualities, you're not going to be able to hold the ball as long as he has in college football. Now, you look at his game could be compared to quite a few quarterbacks we've seen come out of the draft. And I look at his talent, and one of them really stick out to me is Sam Darnold. Sam Darnold, when he came out of college, everybody thought he had a quality arm. He could stand in the pocket and make every single throw. But the problem with Sam Darnold in USC is he held on to the ball too long, which put him into a lot of positions where it got him in trouble. Now, I don't know if Shedeur Sanders has the talent that obviously Sam Darnold was when he came out of USC. But everybody, including the scouts that we've had on this show, think that he is the best quarterback in this class. And then I've spoken to people off air and asking him, where do you see Shedeur Sanders? If this was last year's class, do you think Shedeur Sanders is a first-round draft pick? Do you even think Shedeur Sanders is a top 20 pick? And the answer from two of these scouts, two of these personalities that I've met off air and actually has been on our show, is said that more than likely, if he was drafted last year, he was a second-round talent. And I understand when you look at the position that some of these teams are in, Tennessee being one of them. even if you look at the Browns could be looking for a quarterback too, because Deshaun Watson is not the quarterback of the future of this organization. It would worry me when you're looking at teams like the Giants, where you got Joe Schoen sitting there, and he's in position right now where if he doesn't make the right choice, if he doesn't draft the right quarterback, or even make a move in a trade to bring in the right quarterback, his career as the GM of the New York Giants is over. And the Giants are going to be looking for a new GM, new coach, and new rebuilding scheme. And this has been the Giants' call for the last couple of years. I know I was talking to Fish before the show, and he says Travis Hunter would be a great fit for the New York Giants because he's a corner and he's a wide receiver. And with the Giants, they could use another wide receiver on this roster. I think that the Giants it's detrimental for the New York Giants to add a quarterback talent to this roster. And I don't think you bring in a Matthew Stafford or Justin Fields, it's going to put them in a position to win now. They need to win now. And the Giants are in a division right now that has the Eagles and a growing Washington Commander team that has Jaden Daniels and a coach that is very, very hungry in Dan Quinn. So the Giants need to make good moves in this year's draft and in free agency. I just don't know if Travis Hunter is the guy, and I definitely don't believe Shedeur Sanders is the guy to come to New York. So it would worry me if I was the New York Giants and I was this organization where they're put in a position where the only quarterback that probably fits or is going to be available at number 3 is Shedeur, and Travis Hunter is definitely going to be there. I think Travis Hunter, if he doesn't go to the Giants, he's probably going 5. That's where I think. I don't think he's going past 5, but it would worry me right now when you're hearing, and we're going to get into it in a few minutes, I've been hearing that the Jets reached out to Tennessee, and the Jets are interested in moving up from 7-1 to get Cam Ward. And I've heard also that the Giants, over the last 3 seasons, have been scouting Cam Ward, that he was the guy that the Giants have been looking at for the last couple of years. If he is your guy and you're drafting at number 3, you should do anything to move up to number 1 to get your guy. I don't want to hear that Carter's the guy. He's the most talented player in this year's class from Penn State. I don't want to hear that, Travis Hunter, he's a transitional player. He's a guy that can change your team and your organization. I don't want to hear that. You need a quarterback. Quarterbacks are not easy to find, and I understand. I've also talked to Fish about this off air. He says that Cam Ward, it's going to take at least a year or 2 for Cam Ward to get comfortable as a quarterback, a starting quarterback in this league. That's
but what
fine.
do you think they would have to give up to get that, though?
At 3, I think the Giants would have to give up another first. I think they would give up this year's first, another first, and probably a third. That's where I think what the Giants are going to have to give up. If the Jets make the move from 7-1, the Jets are going to have to give up this year's 1, next year's 1, a 2 this year, a 2 next year, and probably another 1. I would say the Jets are going to have to give up 3 1s and 2 2s to get Cam Ward at number 1. Now, if the Jets think that Cam Ward is their guy and you're willing to give up that kind of stock, then you do whatever it takes to get number 1. That's my opinion here. But I don't know what Cam Ward is. All I know is I like the kid. I think he fits and what he has said. To come to New York, he's not a guy that's going to go out and party. He doesn't drink. He said that he's not a drinking type of guy. He's a guy that's a stay-at-home person that likes to play board games and hang out with the family. If that's the guy the Giants have seen over the last 3 years and scouted over the last 3 years, you will do anything you can to move up to number 1, and don't let the Jets try to move up to number 1 to get your guy.
So you look at the case with Shedeur Sanders, I think he's somebody that I don't think has that leeway to be able to just say, I'm not going to throw at the combine. Because last year, the top 3 draft prospects, they were like, not necessarily can't miss. Caleb Williams was thought of that way. The other 2 were still kind of maybe still in that top tier. Those 2 guys were light years ahead of prospects to where Shedeur Sanders was. And I think that case is something that I think he has to take advantage of. You want to focus on the interview process, that's fine. That's my biggest concern with Shedeur Sanders is his leadership aspects because of everything he said, throwing his offensive line under the bus, obviously everything with Deion Sanders and all the stupid stuff they did over the summer. Like, yeah, that's a concern with NFL teams, but they're 2 independent processes. It's not like you're doing Tuesday a drill, then you're all of a sudden going to interview with a team, and then going Wednesday to another drill. So I think that still is a flawed aspect of it in a quarterback class that is unknown. Cam Ward might be the safest quarterback prospect in this class, but he's still behind even some of the ones from last year too. So there's still some concern on that end, and he's still going to show his combine.
Is Cam going to be at the combine?
As far as I know,
is he going to be throwing at the combine?
I believe he is.
So if he's throwing at the combine, so should Shedeur. I don't want to hear that Shedeur feels more comfortable playing and throwing at his pro day. I don't want to hear about May, Caleb Williams, or Daniels. Those guys were much better prospects than he was. And to me, I understand. We've heard Sam Darnold didn't throw at the combine. We all know that story, and he threw at his pro day and looked very, very good. But if Shedeur is going to go out there and show people that he is a quality quarterback and that he can compete with every single quarterback going into this class, including Cam Ward, who Cam Ward came out and said he is a way better quarterback as far as accurate and as far as a mobile quarterback. This guy can do everything. He said he is so much better than Shedeur. Everybody's going to see him at the combine, and why everybody thinks that he's the number one prospect in this class. If Cam Ward is saying that, Shedeur should have heard that, and he's heard that on plenty of interviews. If Shedeur knows that, he should go out there and outplay Cam Ward at the combine. And if he's not going to do, Cam Ward's going to be playing in his pro day. He's going to be throwing in his pro day. He's not going to make any excuses. I'm going to go at the combine. I'm going to prove myself at the combine. And after I do that, I'm not going to throw in my pro day. He's going to do both. You know why? Because he wants to prove that he's not only a quality quarterback, he's going to prove why everybody is saying he is the best prospect quarterback coming out of this class.
And everyone that ends up skipping their pro day is either somebody that maybe had an injury risk towards the end of the year as an injury-prone player in college, or maybe a different position that's a more injury-prone position that you could say, okay, maybe a wide receiver that doesn't want to run, or a defensive lineman that doesn't want to do any strength drills, stuff like that. I think with a quarterback, it's very hard to be able to duplicate just throwing success at decision-making traits just based on athletic grades at a combine anyway, but you still want to be able to see different types of throws. You still want to see different types of decision, especially in an era of football where you're seeing a lot more complicated offenses, RPO-type offenses. And I think somebody like Shedeur Sanders is not, while he can run and do play action pretty well, I think it's still not a perfect thing. He's not like a Lamar Jackson type where he's a dual threat right away. That's very obvious. He's not even Jaden Daniels at LSU level, anywhere close to that. And those types of college quarterbacks transition their games a lot easier in the game. I think Shedeur Sanders doing that, I get he wants to focus on the moral side of it and try to impress NFL teams that way, because that's where I'm most concerned too. But that does not mean he's like this can't-miss prospect that just has leadership issues and is flawed beyond that.
He says he's the best leader in this class.
You would think,
he
but
came out, and Deion Sanders was on. He was over there in Louisiana. He spoke to Stephen A. Smith. I saw what he said about his son. That he says, but he's by far the best talent in this class. It's not even a question. Now Deion Sanders is going to say that, but it would bother me if I was Cam Ward or even Quentin Ewers, who came out, and some people thought Quentin Ewers was the number one prospect out of this class before this season, and what Cam Ward did and Shedeur Sanders did. Shedeur Sanders, to me, when you look at the quality of talent that he played against this year, even his team and the quality players around him as far as his team, besides Travis Hunter, are any of these guys first or second round talents on that Colorado team? The answer would be no. So what does that tell you? It tells me, when you look at the superstardom that he says that he is, and Travis Hunter and Deion Sanders says that Travis Hunter and Shedeur Sanders are, Shedeur Sanders and Travis Hunter, in Deion Sanders' eyes, should go 1 and 2. In my opinion, I think Travis Hunter is a top 10 pick. I think Travis Hunter is number 6 or number 7. I don't think he's a top 5 talent. That's just my opinion. I know everybody's going to attack me on that. I don't think he is, even though he's a dual threat. And Shedeur Sanders is not, and I'll say it again, like I said last year, he is not a first-round talent. If anything, he's a late first-round talent, and the only reason why he's a late first-round talent is because there are teams desperate for a quarterback. That's the only reason why. He is not Lamar Jackson. The reason why Lamar Jackson was drafted in the final pick of the first round by the Baltimore Ravens was because nobody thought he was accurate enough to throw in the NFL. As far as God-given talent, I don't think we've seen a God-given talented player like Lamar Jackson in the last 25 years coming out of the draft. And now you can see why everybody thinks he's arguably the best quarterback in the NFL.
Yeah, and also they're judging quarterbacks now based on the athletic builds first. So that'll give somebody like anyone who has the speed of Lamar Jackson or the size of Josh Allen that kind of advantage. I don't see that kind of thing with Shedeur Sanders either. Now, Shedeur Sanders can throw on the run. He's decent with play action. But again, his decision-making is still kind of inconsistent. Like you said,
indecisive.
Yeah, he's really stat padding against a lot of these bad teams, which has helped him. The first couple months with Colorado, I would say he played against some good competition pretty well. But it still wasn't like the Big 12 in today's college football is not like it's used to be. And Big 12 defenses are never great outside of a couple years. So that's the competition you're going against. And you could say the same thing with Cam Ward and down here for the ACC, but the ACC, most of their strengths, they're good teams or good defensive teams, though. So it's still not something that you could trust to be able to do that. I don't think either quarterback is a top 5 overall prospect, but Shedeur Sanders is not going to just confidently think he could just be a top 5 pick just by not showing up at the combine.
Yeah, that's the one thing that I've always wondered, because we've obviously seen both sides of it, where people going to the combine and, being an okay just player during the year and then go out and they run a crazy 40 and just do some crazy things in the combine. And we've seen that obviously help a lot of drafts. Like DK Metcalf is one that comes to mind. And obviously Josh Allen in Wyoming, obviously not a big school. We know that around here in Nebraska because we have Nebraska ties to the Wyoming football program. But I think in some of the ways that they perceive the combine first pro day, I don't know which one is better than the other. Honestly, I don't know that answer. But if you're able to, and my question is, and I don't know this, and I've thought about this when you see these guys either doing it or not doing it, we've kind of seen it both ways how, things have changed. Do you think it's, I wouldn't say a necessity, but do you think if they don't do it, it hurts them a little bit?
It absolutely hurts them.
For somebody that's a kind of a question mark, yes. It's not like Caleb Williams was like a generational talent thought of as a prospect, and Trevor Lawrence in his draft was thought of that. I think he skipped the combine because for that reason. He did his pro day at Clemson, and if somebody's like that, okay, fine. Abdul Carter skipping his pro day.
Yeah, but everybody says Abdul Carter is probably the best prospect out of this class.
That makes a little more sense. No team that is a defensive player or needing a defensive player is going to pass up on him if they think he's the best talent in this draft, especially a team like the Browns if they trade Myles Garrett, a team like the Raiders, the Patriots, all these guys that are not going to need, well, the Raiders need a quarterback, but the Patriots don't need a quarterback. They're not going to pass on somebody like that that's considered that kind of a talent. Somebody like Shedeur Sanders has big question marks still in his game and in his leadership tactics that, yes, the interviews might show some, but these interviews are not going to come out for a while, and these interviews are going to be different with every team.
I know a lot of people are probably saying Jaden Daniels had the same, people had the same conversations about Jaden Daniels when he was coming out of class. But guess what? Jaden Daniels played in an SEC, the LSU Tigers. I mean, LSU is one of the best college football programs in the world. Okay? You look at Shedeur Sanders, he's playing for Colorado. Does anybody think they're a game-changing organization, a game-changing program? Yeah, Deion Sanders knows how to use the portal. Deion Sanders knows how to, draw players to come and play for him with NIL deals. We all know that's what these coaches are going to be using now because there's money involved. But for anybody to think right now, today, that Shedeur Sanders not going to the combine is going to help him, I beg to differ. I don't think it's going to help him. I don't care what kind of scouts, how many NFL teams are going to go see him on his pro day, which every single one of them are going to see him. I just think that it tells me right now he can't take the pressure. He can't go to the combine and show people that he can step into the pocket and make every single throw because there's so much pressure on him because he's Deion Sanders' boy.
There's only one reason why he's not doing it. It's because if he's a top 5 pick or a top 10 pick, if he showed up at the combine and actually performed and did the measurables, he wouldn't be anymore. I think that's what they're saying by this is that that
was my question. Yes. Is like in this instance, is that kind of one of the background thoughts of it?
Think about it. Why would Abdul Carter test when everyone thinks he's the next like freaking Mario Williams?
He's a freak.
Going to be like
he's a freak.
You know what I mean? A physical freak. Why would he test? It's not necessary. It's not. There's no point. So that's one reason why you wouldn't test. The other, if you're kind of a fraud and people think that that you should go really high And if you test, you'd really test just like a bunch of other second round picks if you had a different last name. And I think that's what they're going to see with Sanders. Look, Sanders is probably going to be able to be a successful player in the NFL for at least a short period of time. Will it be right away? Will it be with a team, the first team that takes him? I'm not so sure about that. I think there's a lot of maturing that he has to do. We saw him at Radio Row with the second largest posse of any group person.
Ridiculous.
Higher place.
Ridiculous.
And it was just like, dude, you really haven't done anything yet. But, I appreciate that he's rolling like that. He has confidence in himself. Now he has to prove it. Like it's time to put up or shut up. He hasn't had to really yet. You can be like in an above average team in the Big 12, but that's it. Like that for 1 year, not even 2 years, just for 1 year. So you really haven't proven anything yet. So I really hope that it works out for him. Just as like a fan of sports, you want to see good players be good and get to play. I'm a little dubious of him. If the Giants take him at 3, I'm going to be very sick to my
Everything
stomach.
that I've heard, that the Giants are very intrigued with him, and
I'm sure they are.
And to me, he was throwing when he was in New York. He was throwing with what's his name again? He was out on the street throwing with the young neighbors. He was throwing with neighbors on the street. Everybody, there was video out there that him and neighbors are actually really good friends. That they're interactive with each other on text messages, and the Giants. They're not one of those teams like the Jets. If the Jets brought in Shedeur Sanders, it would be a clown show. It would be an absolute clown show because that's the Jets. The Jets like to bring in these name guys. Deion Sanders, Sanders on the back, that Sanders would be going to the practices. Everybody would want to interview him over Aaron Glenn. That's why I think Aaron Glenn will not, no matter what. If Shedeur Sanders is sitting there at 7, there's no way in hell the Jets are going to draft Shedeur Sanders. And one of the main reasons why is, to me, he's a clown show. You do not want Deion Sanders at the games, in the locker room, opening his mouth with a young coach. And I say young coach because this guy's a rookie coach. He's never had a position like this before. He's been an assistant coach, a defensive coordinator. He's got a lot of pressure on him, being that he's an ex-Jet. He was a Pro Bowl player, and he's been, the face. He's going to be the face of the Jets organization moving forward for the next 6 years. So I don't know if Aaron Glenn or any of the executives of the Jets organization would want a guy like Shedeur. Now, the Giants, on the other hand, because they're an organization supposedly that knows how to control players and keep players on the down low, even though they've had problems over the last couple of years, and John Mara is a guy that has been very outspoken over the last 10 years. Remember, 20 years ago, we weren't talking about the Maras were like respected like the Rooney family. Yeah. Winning organization, knows how to find a way to win, knows how to draft the right guys and bring in the right guys. Now they're an organization that's sitting there wondering who's going to quarterback next year. Is some guy named Joey Chestnut, who is over there in New Jersey, and his parents are selling shirts on the side of MetLife Stadium because they're trying to make some money. Or you're going to go after a guy like Shedeur, or go after Matthew Stafford, where there's stories coming out that Matthew Stafford wants to play in New York. The Giants right now are in a position where they have to make a decision, and they got to ride with it. And I think they need to go with Cam Ward. I think the Giants. It's so very important that they make this move and go after Cam Ward, because if the other team across the stadium finds a way to jump from 7-1 and get Cam Ward, and Cam Ward turns into Jaden Daniels, I mean, the Giants are going to be attacked by not only social media, but their fans. And say sayonara to Joe Shane and Mr. Petey Pablo over there, because there's not going to be much of an argument. The Giants are going to be looking for a new GM and a new coach.
Kevin Fitz in the comments section too. If anything, the Giants scouting Cam Ward makes me less confident in the kid. The Giants' decisions
I disagree.
Have sucked. Okay, that's fine, Kevin. I mean, I'm not saying that any one player is going to transform the Giants. I don't think the Giants are one player away, even if they get the quarterback right necessarily. But at the same time, you talked about Washington. We talked about the Texans the year before. Like, they were kind of thought of in that same position though too. So anything's possible if you have the right type of coaching staff. I don't know if the Giants do. There's still a lot of questions with that, but it's also a little different too, Kevin, with these regimes from the past one with Dave Gettleman. They drafted Saquon Barkley number 2 very questionably because you don't draft a running back that early. Then they kind of panicked because the Giants fans were like, oh, why did you draft a quarterback last year? They draft Daniel Jones, and all of a sudden they're both gone now. And it's a little different now where I think they're trying to go for more of the sheer value. If the Giants draft Cam Ward at number 3, that would be that kind of value. If they draft Shedeur Sanders, that would not be that value, especially now participating at the Combine.
And if Shedeur, like, realistically, I mean, it's the draft is a crapshoot. Like in any sport, you kind of have certain ones that you get. Somebody, like realistically, if he does fall, how far do you think he would fall?
I would think that if he falls out of the top 7, he's going to fall probably in the 20s. In the 20s.
It's the Raiders that he won't get by the Raiders, most
That's
people
what I'm
think,
thinking.
right? Because
Yeah.
the Raiders need a quarterback in the worst way, and it would make a lot of sense.
Where are the Raiders
Vegas
drafted?
being-
6?
6.
And Pete
So
Carroll
I
loves those
think
big
6
mouth
is-
guys.
I think the Raiders don't draft him. I really
So
don't.
if he falls past 6, then it could be like an Aaron Rodgers type of fall. It could take him till later in the round because teams are he's not gonna fall in the second. We've talked
No,
about it in the
no.
past. We talked about it, I believe, with Amber Theo Harris on Radio Row as
Yep.
well, that no one goes in the second anymore as a quarterback. It's the third
Or they
or
trade
the
up to the
first.
first, yeah.
Or they trade into the back of the first because you get 2 more years of controllability if you do that, as opposed to being a second-round pick. So if it's a second-round pick, there's still really good players in the draft. You may as well take that player, in the quarterback, in the third. So
Didn't
that's why
Amber
we've been
love?
seeing that.
I think she loves Shedeur Sanders. I think she actually likes him. I
don't
think
know if she liked him. I mean, I think she was trying to put on that that politically correct face because she has to talk to the Raiders people all the time, and there's a good chance that maybe they don't even sit. Maybe the Giants trade back. It's possible that the Giants don't fall in love with either one. If Ward is gone at 1, then they trade back if they're not in love with.
I think it's
Sanders.
a catastrophical mistake if the Giants don't move up from 3 to 1. I'm telling you
I
right now.
kind of tend to agree with you. I don't think it'll cost another first. Actually, looking at the draft calculator, it only takes 800 points to go from 3 to 1. So if they were another top 10 pick next year, which I mean, let's face it, probably going to be the case, they will that pick will be way too valuable to do that. So it'll probably be something like a couple of seconds, even though they gave up a couple of seconds for Burns. So they're going to have to get creative. I don't know if creative is Joe Shane's forte. I will say this.
I don't know
though.
what anything is for Joe.
I will
Shane
say this:
is.
last year, Neighbors first round pick, we got a hit. Newbin, one of the best rookie safeties in the league. That's a hit. Drew Phillips was a little hurt, but played really well when he was out there. That's a hit. You had Tyrone Tracy, 5th round pick. That was a hit as well.
Well, you have to see what these guys are going to do with their second and third year.
But
Come
I'm
on,
telling
Fish.
you, that's a really good job for the first time.
Trevor Lawrence looked good his first year, and then ever since then, there haven't been hits.
Let's just say we only seen positive feedback from those guys. You're right that there's a lot of truth to the sophomore slump, but I'll tell you what. It's the first time that he's actually had guys play well in the first year they're there. So let's run with it. That's all we got right now.
And Joe
boys.
Douglas has had a lot of guys actually play well in his second and third year, and he doesn't have a job anymore. So,
he should have been following the Madden rankings.
Oh,
He would have done
please.
so much better.
Pat Leonard of the New York Daily News reports that Joe Shane has been asked by several teams on how he handled Hard Knocks and said he wouldn't know what to tell them after last season. He added that Joe Shane was the star of the first ever offseason for Hard Knocks for all the wrong reasons, especially now with the Eagles winning the Super Bowl. Hard Knocks showed Joe Shane's embarrassment with handling Saquon Barkley's contract over the phone and completely caught Saquon off guard. It also showed that Joe Shane wanting to trade up in the draft for a quarterback, essentially throwing Daniel Jones under the bus. Several of those scenes have since been used in commercials for a sleeping aid company featuring Saquon Barkley as the spokesperson. The NFL is not sure whether they will do another Hard Knocks with an off-season theme, with franchises worried they will be embarrassed like the Giants were last season. Well, it's pretty simple. We all know what Joe Shane did, and it didn't look pretty when it came to Saquon Barkley. Saquon Barkley went on this past year to have almost a record-breaking season, almost passing Eric Dickerson. If he played that final game, I think he breaks Eric Dickerson's record. And then what he did in the playoffs with the touchdowns, I think he had 5 or 6 touchdowns. He had one of the best running back runs we've ever seen a running back have throughout the playoffs. No, he didn't have a great Super Bowl, but we all know what Spagnuolo likes to do, and he likes to stop one strength to attack the other. And that's what they did. They shut down Saquon Barkley. He had 57 rushing yards for 23 or 24 attempts. He didn't have a very good Super Bowl, but it didn't matter. They won the Super Bowl, and one of the main reasons why they got to the Super Bowl was because of Saquon. But what we saw through Hard Knocks is a guy that was a deer in the headlights. I don't really think that Joe Schoen actually knows or knew what he was doing when it came to Saquon Barkley. It's very hard to predict what a guy's going to do when he goes to another organization unless you have the last name Barkley. And Barkley proved it once again as a player, not only coming from Penn State and doing what he did at Penn State and then going to the Giants and putting up the numbers for the couple of years that he was there with the Giants, going to the Eagles, and this had record-breaking numbers for a Philadelphia Eagle team that has had problems over the years since LaShawn McCoy when it comes to running the ball. And I will say this, what Joe Schoen stands for, we don't know. Did he have a good draft last year? He had a decent draft. I know Fish is going to say he had a quality draft, but we have to see what these guys are going to do in their sophomore and junior years. These guys are going to have to develop as players. We've seen what Dexter Lawrence has become, but that wasn't Joe Schoen's guy. That was Gettleman's guy. He drafted him at 16, and he's turned out to be a pretty good get. As we all know, we call him Gettleman. But nevertheless, I just look at this Joe Schoen story to be a joke. I really think he is the mockery of the New York Giants. I think the Giants obviously are going to have to make a decision at the end of this coming season if he's there to stay or he's there to go. And that means he's going to be taking his coach with him in Brian Daboll. Brian Daboll has been a failure since he's been coach of the year with the Giants and taking the Giants to a playoff run and knocking off the Minnesota Vikings. And that was with a Daniel Jones that you decided. Yes, Joe Schoen decided to give him a $40 million a year contract. And he's still paying him right now. He's paying him to the bank. As Daniel Jones right now is going to be looking for a job this offseason and might be playing in the CFL or the UFL or whatever FL you want to call it. Giant fans will probably call it the FUCK League because they couldn't stand him. But I don't think they gave him a chance to survive or be successful. And one of the main reasons why is you traded his best piece. Oh, I'm sorry, you didn't trade him. You let his best piece go in free agency. At least you could have traded him and got something for him, which me and Fish were talking about earlier. I just think right now the Giants are an organization that are trying to breathe. They're trying to breathe, and they're on a respirator. They're just like the Jets. The Jets have been around on a respirator for 55 years, and the Giants have been on a respirator for the last 10. I have no idea where this organization is heading. I just don't know if Joe Schoen's the guy. And if you look at the statistics would tell you that he is going to fail and fail miserably. I read what Pat Leonard said. I also see what other different, obviously writers think of Joe Schoen. We still don't know what Joe Schoen is or what he could be as a GM because he was handed a team that really didn't have many pieces. The pieces that they did have, he decided to part ways with. And he kept one piece that has looked like, you don't need to be much of a genius to know what Dexter Lawrence is. But I just think that the Giants right now have so many holes to fill. They're so weak in so many different areas. They're drafting at 3. I do believe they should move up at 1 for a quarterback. Cam Ward is definitely the guy for them. There are other teams that are looking to jump the Giants and jump the Browns to get him. If the Giants were smart, they don't let any team jump and pounce on him. Just go up and get your guy. Because if you don't, just like somebody playing for the Commanders, you're going to wonder if you did the right thing drafting a Travis Hunter or drafting one of these other guys that everybody is saying that the Giants could draft. We'll find out what the combine is this coming week. I'm interested to see how these players pan out. We all know Shedeur Sanders is not throwing at the combine. So if the Giants are expected to go after him at 3, the Giants are going to have to go to his pro day and kiss Deion Sanders' ass at the pro day because that's the only place you're going to see Deion Sanders because he's not going to be at the combine. But I just wonder, watching Hard Knocks and I know Joe Schoen's asking different execs and asking different people what they thought about Hard Knocks. I'm sure he was embarrassed. How could you not be? Your owner and John Mara was walking out of your walking out of your office and said before walking out, if he goes to the Eagles, it's catastrophical. And then he walks out shaking his head, and then what? 48 hours, he signs with the Eagles. And I could only imagine what John Mara is trying to do to Joe Schoen in the locker room or in his office when the cameras aren't there. He's probably grabbing him by the neck and trying to choke him to death. Because when you lose a player of that magnitude, when you lose your superstar, your guy, your face of your organization, you got to make sure, you got to make damn sure that you're going to put this team in the right position at that position to succeed. And going after a guy, I don't know what they call himself, Truck. What is his nickname, Speedy? I don't know. Motor, I'm sorry. Motor. And then I know all these guys. I know every Giant fan loves this kid, Tracy. We don't know what he is. He had a good rookie season. You're going to have to do that consecutively. And he's going to get his chance this year because more than likely he is going to be the number one for the New York Giants. I just think you have to hesitate what Joe Schoen has said over the last couple of months, and then hesitate what you saw as he really showed himself as the leader and the executive of not the year of the New York Giants. I mean, he was in an absolute embarrassment, and he didn't look very good asking his son, his daughters, what they would do in the draft. It didn't look very well. And by the way, his son was really right about Jaden Daniels. I mean, maybe he should have listened to him. He should have traded up for Jaden. I don't know if the Commanders would have allowed that, but hey, maybe you trade the bank. Maybe you move the bank to get somebody like Jaden Daniels because you see the Commanders, you see how successful you are when you have a quarterback in place.
Yeah, it was a hefty price because we were talking about it. The Commanders and the Patriots were the only two teams that probably would have considered trading back at that point. Anyway, Chicago was locked into Caleb Williams at number one, and a lot of those teams in front of them, you didn't have to really trade up at that point because there was no competition to really get the quarterback. So the Commanders, division rival, the Patriots, the local rival with the 2 Super Bowls and all that stuff. They weren't Robert Kraft and not Bill Belichick anymore, but that regime wasn't going to do that. As far as the actual Hard Knocks concept itself, yeah, I could see where the skepticism would come with getting these problems in light. This is what bad organizations do, and Joe Schoen doing it from a player relationship standpoint definitely dug his own grave, essentially, and not going to have any players be able to trust that kind of contract negotiations. They paid Andrew Thomas, they paid Dexter Lawrence, fine, but again, they still mishandled Daniel Jones. They still mishandled Saquon Barkley, and Daniel Jones got his money, and then all of a sudden, he's throwing one on the bus a year later. And again, we knew the contract was bad. Anyone could say $40 million a year for a guy that was the 20th ranked quarterback in the NFL at the time. Yeah, anyone could have saw that coming, but you still see organizations, even the Giants in the past, even when they were losing, still handle their players well. They always had that thought of good team culture, and the NFLPA ownership ratings came out today, and the Giants were in the bottom 10 for ownership.
The Giants' ownership has not been very good for the last 13 years.
No.
They have not been very good when they were being considered like the Rooneys. I said this on Monday. They were considered 2 of the best ownerships in all of football that you want to mimic. You want to be a part of those organizations and work with those organizations because they know what they're doing. Well, the Giants, over the last couple of years, absolutely don't know what they're doing. And the Rooneys haven't gone out of the first round in, 7-8 years consecutively? Yeah, Mike Tomlin's is an exceptional coach and very successful, but he can't win the big game, as we've seen 7 or 8 years in a row where he's completely choked in the first round against teams that he was better than. So I think you look at the Giants and you look at their organization as a whole, you only have to step back and wonder, where do they go if Joe Schoen isn't the guy? Where do they go when it comes to the coach position if Dable wasn't the guy? Because I remember when Brian Dable won Coach of the Year and he won, and he went on that stage during the, what do they call that? Those honor awards, and he went up there and he said, we're expected to win a Super Bowl in the very near future. And then after he said that, the team's been an absolute debacle. I mean, they've been an absolute joke as an organization. So there's a lot of questions to where the Giants should go after this coming season if it fails.
Yeah, another comparison I think is good for the ownership standpoint and from the GM standpoint is the Bears. I think they're another team that's thought of as this old school type ownership. By the way, rest in peace, Virginia McCaskey just passed away last week. But like they're kind of thought of in that same light because of the history that they have, and the Giants, same kind of thing. And I think the last couple of years they've had issues when it comes to their stabilization of their players. Good talent that they have had. Look at the Bears this year; they had good talent, and then they just couldn't get anything going. That's why Matt Eberflus was one of the lowest rated coaches in the player poll as well. But nevertheless, the other comparison too that Brian Dable and Joe Schoen are turning into is very much like Matt Nagy and Ryan Pace. That great first year. Ryan Pace was very good at hitting on day 3 picks like Joe Schoen has done, but they're not good at hitting on key positions. Now, Joe Schoen hasn't given out the bad contracts like Ryan Pace did in Chicago and those ridiculous trades that he made, but still, I think the parallel is very similar, and they're getting a lot of players to lose the locker room because of that. We talked about the anger management issues with Brian Dable too, and Joe Schoen. They're definitely making a lot of people angry saying what he said on Hard Knocks the way he did.
Well, Dable actually got a B+ for coaches on this NFLPA survey. So it really wasn't that. There was just more about lackluster facilities for the Jets and the Giants. We'll talk about the Jets ratings in a little bit. But for the Giants part of it, that doesn't surprise me. The Maras were given this team. You know, if you go back to the 80s, the league had to step in and help the Giants with George Young. If you have to go back to that time, because the Giants were a disaster throughout the 70s and before that. You get that. Parcells, they luck into Parcells. They pick the right guy with Parcells. And since then, it's been a pretty good history up until this picture that I wanted to show you, which is the famous Love Boat picture of the Giants. Back, Speedy, when did this picture happen?
In January 2017.
On Justin Bieber's boat. And I remember Odell Beckham, after this season was over, this was the game before the playoffs against Green Bay. I remember it. Yeah. They went to Florida to hang out with Justin Bieber. All the guys, the whole offensive side of the
corners.
Ball. Yep.
Uh-huh. The entire group.
Yep. Was Barkley there? I don't think Barkley was
he wasn't drafted yet.
It was before Barkley. That's
it was
why
Orleans Darkwa running back.
Well, it's probably what did in Orleans. Let's put it that way. Because they've been pretty much garbage since that picture. They were garbage in the playoff game, and then they've been garbage since. They had the one game, you said it, Daniel Jones. We talk about all the time that Vikings team was one of the worst good record teams of all time. They should have been like 3 or 4 wins worse than they were according to advanced statistics. So we kind of got fooled into Daniel Jones. You can say Shane got fooled into Daniel Jones.
Well, hold on 1 second. You keep saying they got fooled in. They didn't do the right by him. I mean, I don't think they did anything right by him. I looked at Gettleman. Look at what Gettleman did for him. He had Saquon Barkley there. They had no wide receivers. They went after Galladay. How long was Galladay there before he was an absolute joke? They overpaid for him because he didn't want to go over there. He really wanted to stay in Detroit. So, I mean, there was a lot of questions, obviously, to that position. And I understand what Giant fans are looking at. They look at numbers and they look at the PFFs and all these statistics the analytics that people are using right now. But at one point, you saw what you can do with Daniel Jones if you have a great player in Saquon Barkley. Now, if they put wide receivers around Daniel Jones, he was a competent quarterback. I don't know if you win a Super Bowl, but I remember when a lot of people in 2007, when that Eli Manning was not playing well, and I remember we were talking about this. Manning came off a really, really bad game against Minnesota, and everybody was thinking, "Hey, yeah, I know. That's why I mentioned it." And people thought, "Hey, you know what? Maybe Tom Coughlin isn't the guy. Maybe Eli Manning isn't the guy." After they decided to part ways with Kurt Warner, and where did Kurt Warner go? Kurt Warner went over there to Arizona and took the Arizona Cardinals all the way to the Super Bowl against the Pittsburgh Steelers. So I understand why everybody doesn't like Daniel Jones, but you can't blame this all on Daniel Jones. You blame this on the executives in office. Joe Schoen. That's his fault because he didn't give him.
I want to blame John Mara a little bit, though, because John Mara, despite the fact you could see he wants to win, unlike maybe what you're seeing in the other part of the New York facilities. But the John Mara,
you're going to bring up the Jets
win.
again.
He
Come
might
on,
not
please.
want to. He might not want to do it the right way. He wants to do it his way, and his way has never worked since he's taken over. Ernie Accorsi built that previously before he really got involved. And Ernie Accorsi built that structure. Tom Coughlin was the caretaker of that structure and built that culture. When they let Coughlin go instead of Jerry Reese, that was the biggest mistake that they ever made in the history of this franchise. It was a death knell to the last 10 years that we've had. It's been absolute garbage since Coughlin's been gone, since that, that good regular season with McAdoo and the lucky year, with Daniel
really
Jones.
Spagnuolo.
Really Spagnuolo. It's a good point.
I remember Giant fans threw Ben McAdoo under the bus too. I don't know if Ben McAdoo would have been good or successful in this league. But as soon as he pulled Eli Manning and put Geno Smith in, which, by the way, Geno Smith went to Seattle and became a starting quarterback, an MVP candidate after that, I think a lot of Giant fans threw him under the bus and didn't think that Ben McAdoo was anything good. And I understand. I know Tom Coughlin didn't want Ben McAdoo there as his offensive coordinator, but if you look at Eli Manning's numbers when Ben McAdoo was the offensive coordinator for the 2 years he was there, he had some of the best numbers he's ever had as a starting quarterback. So I know a lot of Giant fans didn't like Ben McAdoo. I know a lot of Giant fans didn't like Daniel Jones, and I know a lot of Giant fans right now don't like Mr. Brian Daboll. But nevertheless, if you put him in the right position to succeed, they will. And I don't think they were.
Carl in the comment section advocating Fish's point well about how bad Jerry Reese was at drafting. Eli Apple was trash. Yeah, towards the end of.
Yeah. Then he went to the Bengals and was successful.
Yeah, he was good in the playoffs.
Didn't he win a Super Bowl?
They lost, like one good season.
They lost to the Super Bowl to the
No,
Rams.
I'm not talking about the Bengals. Did he go somewhere else and win a Super Bowl?
No, they were screwed out of a Super Bowl by the Saints. He was on that team that got screwed that year against the Rams.
But he's been on playoff contending teams. It just didn't work out. He didn't work out with the Giants. That's all.
Well, I got a bigger problem. The bigger problem is, why are you keeping Joe Schoen to pick a project quarterback when you know that project quarterback won't win in the first year? Because Cam Ward, let's face it, if Cam Ward was in the draft last year, he goes after Michael Penix, probably.
Yes.
Most likely. So that wouldn't be in the top 10. So you're taking a project quarterback with a guy who's got a 1-year shelf life right now. How are you what is he supposed to do? He's not going to want to take that guy. I'm telling you right now, they want Matthew Stafford because Matthew Stafford can win games. And they can't stick around after this season if they don't win games this year. So I wouldn't be surprised at all if the Giants do not go quarterback at the top of this draft because Cam Ward's a project. And if they believe in Shedeur, I guess it's Shedeur. I mean, you hear it might be Shedeur at 3. But if it's not, and they don't believe in him because a lot of people don't, a lot of people think he's way overrated. Maybe he'll be successful in the league, but he doesn't have the intangibles and the talent that scream at you first round pick, really, except for the last name. What are they going to do? They got to go with a veteran if they're going to keep these guys on. But it shows they shouldn't have kept them.
So you're going to bet on a quarterback that has, 2 years left in the league, and you think you're going to win a Super Bowl with him? You need a guy that you can build your team around. You have a guy like Neighbors that's going to be a star. You want to build an offensive line.
There's so many pieces away.
I understand that, but the one piece that you can build your team. They said the same thing about the Commanders. They said the same exact thing about the Commanders. Remember during the season last year? I'm not last year. The year before, they traded away 3 or 2 of their best defensive players. They let them go. They traded them for a bunch of a bag of balls. They said, okay, you can have Sweat, you can have this guy, you can have that guy. We don't need him. And then at the end of the season, they brought in Dan Quinn, and everybody says Dan Quinn has a lot of work to do. A lot of work to do. And what did they do? What was the big thing they needed? They needed to bring in a young quarterback. And what did they do? They had the number 2 pick. They went after Jaden Daniels. They knew, and they thought they brought Cliff Kingsbury in, who I think is a great offensive-minded coach. Not a great coach. We don't know if he can do it again. We'll see what he can do probably next year because I do believe he's going to get a coaching job the year after next. But I do believe that if you get the right guy in place as your quarterback, it changes your whole roster. It changes your whole team. And I think Cam Ward's the guy. And if the Giants don't see that after scouting him for 3 years, when the Giants, 2 months ago said that Cam Ward has been on their radar for 3 years, it just shows you that Joe Schoen doesn't trust his eye for talent.
Well, look, that might be true as far as not trusting. If I would be doubting a lot of things after this past season, especially.
Why? He had a good draft. You said it yourself.
Look, I'm not talking about the draft. We know what we're talking about here. The graphics are on the bottom. It's Saquon Barkley. It's one of the worst decisions a general manager has ever made. They replaced him with Drew Lock, who they made a third-string quarterback for $5 million. Motor Singletary for $6 million. That's 11 out of the 13 and change Saquon got. And I'm sure I can find a backup corner or a backup, guard that got $2.5 million on the roster. That's what they decided to do instead of paying for Saquon Barkley. They paid for a bag of balls. That is unbelievable. A fireable offense. And now they're in a situation where you have a general manager who might not want to take a quarterback who can't win in his first year. That's what we're looking at right now. And a head coach who clearly doesn't want that because he knows his ass is gone if he doesn't win.
But you're not going to win with Matthew Stafford either.
Well, you're more likely to win with Matthew Stafford than
How much are you going to win with Matthew Stafford?
Well, you got to protect for him.
I'm just saying.
They got to take a line.
That's the problem. Now, if you get Cam Ward,
trade back and get a line.
If you get Cam Ward, you don't have to worry about going after and gunning. Not really.
You're not going to win with Cam Ward.
You're not going to win this year anyways. You're not beating the Commanders because you need a future. You need a future.
But why keep Schoen and Dable if you are punting on this year?
Because I don't know. You asked John Mara that. I'm not the owner.
That's my criticism. That's what I'm saying. John Mara is making this is one of the dumbest decisions ever. Why would you keep these guys on if they're project quarterbacks or you got to trade for basically Aaron Rodgers 2.0 with Stafford, 2 years left in the league, give him a shot. I mean, Stafford had, broken back, 2 years ago?
Yep.
I mean, come on. It's just something to hold somebody over that's competent at the game of football. You said it earlier with Eli Manning.
Yep.
Or Eli Manning was a great understander of how to play football, even with a lesser roster, even with a lesser coach like McAdoo calling plays. Eli could run it himself. Jaden Daniels apparently is good enough in year one. How many times has a guy come into the league this good? You can count it on one hand. So to expect Cam Ward to be that good is not likely. Can he? It's very possible. It's possible, but the odds are against it, right? So the chances of Schoen hitting on a first-round guy that's ready to win so he keeps his job, I don't think he takes that chance. And that's probably not the right thing for the franchise because I'm with you, Errol. I think Cam Ward's a good prospect. I would love to see him in New York. I think he's got the right attitude and he can take it. I just think now that Schoen is there with Dable, they can't afford to do it, and now they're going to make a mistake, and they're going to trade back and get Kadarius Toney 2.0.
Oh, yeah, great. Oh, who just got arrested, by the way.
Speaking of teams that need a lot of help, ESPN's Jeremy Fowler reports that the Jets are sleepers to land Justin Fields. He added that the Jets have liked the idea for a dual threat quarterback for a while, and Justin Fields has a good connection with Garrett Wilson when he played in Ohio State. Fields is not expected to get a big contract after barely playing last season, and the Jets view him as the best option to bridge up for a quarterback. The contract projected is expected probably around 2 or 3 year deal worth about $15 per. Fields said he is still open to returning to the Steelers, saying he liked his experience there despite being benched. Fields had 1,106 passing yards, 5 passing touchdowns, 289 rushing yards, and 2 touchdowns in 10 games after the Steelers decided to part ways with him during the Russell Wilson era over there with the Steel Town. Well, I think this might be a good move for the New York Jets for a partial 1 or 2 year deal. Any more than that, I think you're reaching. I like Justin Fields, and I don't know if Aaron Glenn is going to be able to develop him. We saw that Mike Tomlin just decided to part ways with him when they were, 4-1, 4-2? They had a winning record, and they decided after they figured things out with Justin Fields and he was building his connection with George Pickens, after Russell Wilson got healthy, hey, we can win better. We have a better chance of winning right now with Russell Wilson. And I'm not arguing that maybe Mike Tomlin believed that. I just think that Justin Fields deserved an optional chance to try to take this team to the promised land. And maybe they play better in the first round if they had Justin Fields. Russell Wilson, to me, is washed up. He doesn't have the legs he used to have in Seattle. He does have a good arm still, but I think he had a lot of problems, especially making his reads. Justin Fields didn't really have to make his reads. His strength was using his legs. And I think that's what the Jets are going to want to do. They're going to want to run. Aaron Glenn believes in the Bill Parcells way. What did Bill Parcells like to do? He liked running the ball. Go look at the running backs he used to have. It definitely was the old-time football that Aaron Glenn, I believe, is going to use, as a lot of the ex-Jets coaches wanted to use. As you can ask Sexy Rexy what he wanted to do. He wanted to run, then throw. And yes, can you win that way? Yeah, if you make the playoffs, if you are a good running team and you're a great defense and you have a good offensive line, you can win. Now, I think the Jets are a little bit away from calling themselves a contender, but the Jets need the right guy in place. Now, if Aaron Glenn's the right guy and he can develop Justin Fields over there, then the Jets have a quarterback for 3 years for the cheap. And if they can develop him and turn him into a guy that's going to give you, I would say, as the first 5 years of a Lamar Jackson, a guy that can probably throw for 3,200 yards, 3,300 yards, and give you 700 or 800 yards running and 19 touchdowns throwing and about 7-8 touchdowns running, I think you can be successful that way. Now, I don't know if he's going to be that type of player. He doesn't have the arm strength. Well, I think he has the arm strength. I don't think he has the accuracy that Lamar Jackson has had, but I do think he has the ability to make the plays, especially in an AFC East that's very wide open. But I understand the situation the Jets are in. Are the Jets willing to trade up at 7 to 1 to go after Cam Ward? Now, I've heard stories that they're very intrigued with that. And a guy like Aaron Glenn might make and want to pull a trigger like that to get a quarterback of the future that way. But we've seen what the Jets have done over the years. They have failed to bring the right young guy in. Let's go down and out from it. I remember Browning Nagel. Was he the right guy? How about Christian Hackenberg, which they brought in the second round? Was he the right guy? Geno Smith, which they brought in the second round. Was he the right guy? Mark Sanchez, who a lot of teams, including Pete Carroll coming out, his own coach in college, saying that he needed to stay in college for one more year. Was he the right guy after trading up with the Browns to get him at 5? No, he wasn't. Then Sam Darnold. Was he the right guy? He's done well with Minnesota, but not very well with the Jets. Probably the more exceptional one out of all the quarterbacks that have played for the Jets as far as rookies are concerned. And then the great Zach Wilson. What a failure that was. Probably the worst of all of them. So, I mean, that's just a few of them. I could go down the whole line if you really want me to as a Jet fan. It hasn't looked good. It hasn't been good. But I think that if you believe what you have seen on tape, that you can win with a guy like Cam Ward, who reminds me a lot like Jaden Daniels. He does. He reminds me a lot like him. And he said the same thing Jaden Daniels said. He said that if anybody passes up on me in the draft, they're going to regret it. Boy, oh boy, did he not prove that? He took his team all the way in his rookie season to the NFC title game to lose against the future, well, now Super Bowl champion, Philadelphia Eagles. So we understand the situation for what it is. Now, I'm not saying Cam Ward has Jaden Daniels, accuracy or arm strength. I don't know. He has said to have the best arm in this class. He's also said to probably be one of the faster quarterbacks we've seen to come out of a draft class this week, especially when it comes to quarterbacks. So I'm interested to see what Cam Ward turns out to be, but I've seen enough with him with Miami. I also watched him a little bit in Washington. I seen what he can do on the big stage, and he had record-breaking numbers this past year. So if you see all that, and I met him at the Heisman Trophy dinner and at the awards, I thought he was a very nice kid, and I think he would fit here in New York because his calm and his collective decision-making and his personality. I think it's a slam dunk for the Giants. And I'm going to tell you this right now, for all you Jet fans and all you Giant fans, if the Giants and the Jets pass up on this kid and decide I'm going to tell you this right now, Tennessee is not drafting him. Tennessee is not drafting him. I can tell you that. You can book this, ladies and gentlemen. Cam, they're either going to trade out of that pick, trade down 2 spots and still get Carter, or they're going to trade for the best bidder. Teams like the Raiders, the Jets, one of these teams are going to bite. The Jets are going to have to give up 3 first rounds and probably 2/3 to get him. If they slam dunk this, baby, if one of these teams slam dunk this and get Cam Ward, I think they have the quarterback of the future. I think he's by far the best quarterback in this class.
Justin Fields I like for a lot of different reasons. One of which you talked about the contract. I think $15 million a year for a guy that has dual threat ability. We were talking about it when we had Doc Walker on the show last month. Like, dual threat ability adds a different element to your offense. And it's interesting because the offense that the Jets are trying to bring in from this Lions Dan Campbell type scheme didn't rely on those mobile quarterbacks, but it did rely on a lot of running. And they did just draft Hendon Hooker as well, who's a mobile quarterback, so maybe they were trying to ease him in if Jared Goff still continued to struggle like he did in the points during 2022. But nevertheless, I think Justin Fields is a good void for that. I think also what I was talking about when Aaron Glenn was first hired, keeping Garrett Wilson and these other top stars that are in contract years happy. And I think that's one way that you could definitely do that, bringing in a guy that he didn't play with much at Ohio State, but enough at Ohio State where they developed a good enough relationship where they could be trusted down the road. And I think any of these transitional quarterbacks, it's going to be a transition year anyway for the Jets as it is. Like we were talking about when Glenn got hired. I think you want to establish a culture there. You want to make it seem like Dan Campbell's second year in Detroit.
Well, hold on one second. To say that this could be a year where the Jets are likely to win 5 or 6 games, I don't know about that.
I don't think that low. I'm thinking more like 8 games for them.
If they win 8 games, they're a borderline playoff team in an AFC that's so wide open. Look at the South right now. Mm-hmm. Are you going to trust any of those teams in the South besides the team that's going to win the division to come out of there? I don't think so. I think Indianapolis is going to be looking for a new coach after this year because they don't have a quarterback. Because it looks like the guy that they drafted, who everybody thought was going to be an absolute slam dunk after his first season, had shoulder surgery. He's by far not the player he once was in Richardson when he came out of the draft. And there are other players. C.J. Stroud, I love what I see with the kid, but can he get over the hump and get out of that round, get out and take this team to the AFC title game? I don't know yet. I don't know how good the Texans are going to be when they're probably going to lose some pieces in the offseason as well. Mm-hmm. I just think to say that the Jets are a team that cannot win this coming year with a Justin Fields, or if they decide to move up and get Cam Ward, if they get Cam Ward, I think they can make the playoffs. I really do, with the talent that they have around them. This defense was the 3rd best defense in football last year. 3rd best all around. I think they were 3rd when it comes to stopping. I'm sorry, not 3rd at stopping the run. They were 10th stopping the run. I think they were 2nd stopping, going after the quarterback and stopping the pass. And by the way, their number 1 sack leader was a guy that everybody said was a horrible draft pick by Joe Douglas, and that was McDonald. Look how he developed this year after losing Jermaine Johnson for the season after he tore his Achilles. I don't hear anybody saying that McDonald's a failure now. I mean, this guy could be the future guy on the outside, not Jermaine Johnson. So, again, this could be a season that the Jets could sneak into the playoffs and make noise if they get a Cam Ward. The Jets are more talented than the Commanders were going into the offseason last year. And what did the Commanders do? They added a couple of pieces, not big pieces to the puzzle. The Jets have the pieces. They just have the one piece they haven't had in 54 years.
And that's why I'm saying, I think they need to make it like a 2022 Lions season where they were a borderline playoff team. They were kind of a weird fluctuation where they were horrible first month and then they got it going. I remember we were joking about it at the time when we had John Jansen on the show. Oh, you want to?
I remember that.
Yeah, we're going to recruit you for the next Lions head coach when the Lions are like 1-5.
That's from a Michigan guy, by the way.
And they turned it around after that. They almost made the playoffs. They didn't lose to the Panthers and let Deontay Foreman, I think it was, run all over them. They would have made the playoffs that year instead of the Giants or the Seahawks. But nevertheless, I think the Jets need that kind of type year because we've seen this is what bad organizations do in the past. We've seen them try to just go for quick fixes. The Lions did that for years as well. The Browns, they try to go for all these quick fixes rather than trying to establish a real culture. And I think Aaron Glenn, I think, is definitely a guy that's going to create that discipline you were talking about with the press conference, the mindset that he's having in these players, too. And that goes for all these players that are, quote-unquote, divas, like Garrett Wilson was at certain points. Like we've seen Quinn Williams
Every
be at certain
football
points.
player is a diva, especially on the Jets, all right? They call themselves, their nickname is Gang Green, okay? Gang Green. Whatever that means, I have no idea what that means. But to me, it's a rotten foot. I mean, you have green growing on your foot. So I don't take anything but a clown show from the New York Jets. But this is a team that has tremendous talents. I mean, from up top, from really their front seven, even their secondary. Now you have Carter, who was a borderline Pro Bowl player for the last couple of years, except last year. Didn't have such a great year. You have arguably one of the best corners in football who had a bad year last year. I think this team has a tremendous talent. Look at what Allen turned out to be this year when Breece Hall was up and down. I mean, they got two. They have a dual threat of running back. They even have three. They have a triple. They have Earth, Wind, and Fire over there. I mean, they have a tremendous amount of talent over there in the running game. And their wide receiving core is not too bad and too shaky either with the players that they have. So I'm going to sit here right now. And they added Olu Fashanu when he played last year, played fantastically. Look at his PFF last year when he was on the roster. This is a good team. They just are missing a good coach and the one piece, again, that I could say over and over and over again, and Jet fans, you know it to be true too. They failed all these years to bring the right QB in. Is Cam Ward the guy? I don't know. Is Justin Fields the guy? I have no idea. What I do know is whenever a quarterback comes here, if he's drafted or he comes to free agency or he gets traded, they all fail. And they all look like a bunch of gutter rod people rats that can't get out of their own way. And I mean people rats because that's what they are. They're gutter people rats. That's what they are. Whatever that means, but it's true.
Gutter people rats.
Gutter people rats. That's a good line right there.
That's an accurate depiction of the Jets quarterback.
That's a YouTube line right there. Gutter people rats. New York Jets.
South Park once did a thing with man, bear, pig as a creature that spliced together, and Al Gore had to come and save the day. And it's going to take someone from left field to save the day for the Jets, and it might just be Aaron Glenn. Think about what the Lions did to build their team. They built from the inside out. They went and got Penei Sewell as soon as they got there. Penei Sewell is one of the best tackles in all of football. They've got they got the Pro Bowl and All Pro all up that line, especially at the center position. We got Ragnow, who just crushes people if he's healthy. Wasn't healthy at the end of the year, right? And they have suffered too many injuries. What do you think the Jets are going to do? They got to build that interior line. The interior line wasn't there last year. They pieced it together with a bunch of guys, older guys. You have Olu, first-year guy. They need to get a veteran in there that can really do some damage. And there's some guys available this year. So I'm really curious to see what they're going to do. I would be willing to bet they're going to go interior line in the free agency. They're probably going to take another offensive lineman high. And they already have. Think about what they have. They have two really good you said it. Thunder and Lightning. I don't know who the third guy is. Izzy Abakan. I don't know how to pronounce his name.
Isaiah Davis was the other third guy.
He was fantastic in the second half of the season.
Right.
He really was.
So they have guys. It's just the matter of piecing that whole team together. And what would go really well with that, Speedy? A guy like Cam Ward would go perfect with that kind of a run-first offense. That is all play action, that you can run some quarterback counter trey where you got the running backs going right, the lineman going left, and the quarterback follows them that way. You're going to have zone read type stuff like from the college game. And then you can do play action off of that. I guarantee you they're going to go after that tight end from Michigan in the second round.
I was thinking that too.
I would be willing to bet that's what they do because that's what they want. They want to hit that guy over the middle in the play action game. They have Garrett Wilson outside. I'm assuming Devontae Adams is gone. But
it looks like he's headed to the Rams with Aaron Rodgers.
That would be an interest. We'll talk about that next week if that happens, I guess, because it's what Dan Campbell would have done. And Aaron Glenn's a defensive guy, and he saw, not that Dan Campbell's an offensive guy per se, it's just the attitude. And I think he wants to bring that attitude to the team. And every defensive coach knows the running game can control the clock, and that's what a defensive coach always wants his offense to do. So I guarantee you that's what they're going to do this draft. It might be a trade up for Cam Ward. Or, like you said, Justin Fields would be the next best thing at something like that. He has a lot of limitations at reading the offenses. Lamar's great in the pocket and reading the defenses. Justin Fields can't do that very well. They have to shorten the field for him, like you're saying, Speedy. The Jalen Hurts type of an offense where it's more based on the fact that they got to load the box for the running back and the quarterback run game, so that the safety isn't as there are fewer defenders for him to figure out when they're attacking half the field. That's what you really need to do with this guy. They can do that with Justin Fields if they decide to go a different direction, or they can't trade up for Cam Ward, or they lose out for him. I really think either one of those guys are going to be successful with the Jets. I'm not so confident they'd be successful with the Giants. No. Jets maybe, boys. Maybe.
Cam Ward, I think, would be very successful with the New York Giants. It might take a year for him to figure things out, but nevertheless, the Giants aren't winning this year. They're really not. With their roster right now, they're nowhere close to what the Jets are. Not even close. I mean,
how good do the Giants have to be next year for Schoen and Dable to keep their jobs?
If they get Cam Ward, and they've seen glimpses of a guy that can absolutely take over for games, I think they last at least one more year to see what he can do under Dable's tutelage.
Do they have to win 6, 7?
I think they win 6 or 7 if they get Cam Ward.
They might do that anyway, but even so, they'd have to still have Cam Ward at least play like a Rookie of the Year finalist.
I think he does, too. I think the Giants will be able to use him, and I think he fits very, very well in what Dable is probably going to want from him, especially with a guy like Neighbors. And I do believe the Giants are going to go after another wide receiver in free agency. I think they're going to add another one to play on the other side with Neighbors to open up the offense a little bit more, especially if you can't trust Tracy to be the number one guy. I do not see the Giants bringing in another veteran running back. I think they decide to move on from Motor. They trust in Tracy. They draft or they bring in a free agent rookie running back to play behind Tracy, one or two of those guys to win a spot to play under Tracy. I think they're going to ride or die with Tracy and see what he is as a running back. And who knows? Maybe they hit a home run with Tracy. Who knows? We'll only know when we see him in a full season. But he is not Saquon Barkley, and nobody is going to believe that or think that. And if you do, Giant fans, you're complete morons. As far as the Cam Ward saga or the Justin Fields saga, I don't know where the Jets are going to go. And it's probably going to fail no matter where they go, because we all know what happens when a quarterback goes and plays for the Jets. But what we can believe as Jet guys or Jet fans, you guys aren't, as a Jet fan and an Eagle fan, the one thing I can say about the Jets, if the Jets decide to make this move and move up for Cam Ward, they better be damn sure that this guy is the guy. To give up, possibly to jump from 7 to 1, you're probably going to have to give up 3 first-round draft picks, a third. I don't know about 2s, because 3 first-round draft picks is a lot. Yeah. I think you'll probably have to give up 3, a third this year, and probably a 4th somewhere or a 5th somewhere else. But you're going to have to give up 3 first rounds. That means the Jets won't have a first-round draft pick but this coming year. Well, they will with Cam Ward. They're not going to have one next year and the next year after that. And that puts your team in a spot where if Cam Ward's not the guy, oh, my God, this organization is going to be bad, bad, bad for the next 12 to 13 years. So you got to be damn sure this is the guy. And I do think he is a Jaden Daniels-like type of player. I really do. I love what he said. Dude, I have never seen a guy sit there in front of the New York press and answer questions the way he did after Shedeur Sanders has been brought up, not just by Travis Hunter, by even people. Shedeur wasn't even there at the press conference when they were talking about the Heisman. He wasn't even up for a Heisman, and people were asking about Shedeur. That tells me one thing. Cam Ward don't care what Shedeur is going to do or where he is at when it comes to everybody's tongue or mind. All he cares about is him getting drafted and him playing his game. And I think no matter where he goes, he's going to play his game, and he's going to play it very well. So, Giant fans, I really think if you're If you're an organization that believes in bringing in a guy for your future, that is your guy. 110%, he is your guy. If you strike out on him and you do not draft him, and he goes to, I don't know, a team like the Raiders trade up and get him, or the Jets, and he does become a Pro Bowl type of quarterback, oh my God, Joe Schoen will be looked at as probably the worst GM in New York Giants history.
That would be a deja vu moment if that ends up happening, because those other teams probably wouldn't need to trade up at that point. If the Patriots are drafting in front of him in Jacksonville, they're not going to be taking any quarterbacks.
That's what I'm saying.
So,
if the Giants pass up on him, he's still sitting there. The Jets are only going to have to jump maybe, 2 spots to get him?
Right.
They're not going to have to give up 3 first-round draft
the
picks for
Patriots
that.
probably wouldn't trade with him, but the Jaguars could. They go from 7 to 5 to just steal him from
That's
the Raiders.
why
at that
Tennessee is
point.
going to trade him. I'm telling you. Tennessee is moving away. They're not drafting a quarterback at 1.
I think they're going to go with Abdul Carter, and they're going to figure out quarterback later on, because that guy's apparently just going to be the greatest thing, and we'll cover it. But the thing that I wanted to cover, I have this resource I use when we do these things called Calculator Soup, and it has the draft points based on the old Jimmy Johnson
I think Jeff
system.
mentioned that to us before.
Yeah. So if you were to trade from 7 to 1, it's 3,000 points for the number 1 overall pick, and it's 1,500 points for the number 7 overall pick. So you would have to have literally 2 number 7s overall to trade, which you don't know. So you're going to ask for 2 firsts and probably a second, which can be up to another 550 points. And I think that's what it gets it done from 7 to 1.
I think you're going to need more than that. I think they're going to try to rob
throw
him.
in a player or something like that. But there could be something like they do on that end. But that should be all it takes. It would have to be this year's first and second, though.
Well, I do remember what happened when it came to the Redskins. And if I'm not mistaken, when the Redskins, I'm sorry, the Commanders, because you can't say it, but at the time they were called the Red Ones.
Yes.
I remember to trade up, and if I'm not mistaken, the Commanders were sitting at 8. It was 8 or 9.
I think it was 8.
It was 8. They had to give up 3 first-round draft picks for him and something else.
And 3 second rounds
scattered
over the next 3 years.
I'm telling you right now, if the Jets want Cam Ward, they're going to have to give up a hell of a lot more than 2 first-round draft picks.
The Rams, with Jeff Fisher
hell of
there
a
at
lot
the
more.
time, built like a whole defense with those picks.
7th overall isn't anything to sneeze at,
No,
but,
it's not, but I just think you're getting the quarterback of your future. If you think he's your guy, you're going to do whatever
We'll
it
find
takes.
out how many people want Cam Ward, because
Watch what he does at the combine. Watch what he does
say
at the
he
combine.
falls at, say he doesn't go 1, so that immediately drops 400 points off of that, so it's less to trade for. And at that point, you're definitely not giving up 3 1s for him to go from 7 to 2. So it may be a very fluid situation. It's going to be interesting. None of these guys are doing all that much at the combine. Combine's probably pretty overrated. We'll cover it. It starts tomorrow.
Yep.
But it's just a bunch of guys working out without having to hit anybody or know what the plays are. So
They look at those combines to be very important. Especially we've seen players.
I hear some of it is like the quarterback's throwing isn't important.
We've seen running backs.
Their own receivers.
We've seen running backs. We've seen corners jump from, some people thought, second-round talents all the way into the first top 12, top 10 by having a good combine and then failing.
Metcalf was one of those guys that wasn't on anyone's radar. He showed up like a beast at the combine, ran crazy numbers for a guy his size.
Who's the guy that ran the combine and broke records and jumped all the way in the
John Ross.
I remember that.
Worthy,
Right, but Worthy was actually a good prospect that was still thought of as a first-round pick. John Ross was not thought of as a first-round pick.
I still think Xavier Worthy is going to be a pretty good player in the league. I just think he had a freshman year where I obviously believe he wasn't being used as much as he should have been used in the offense. But I absolutely believe it, and I'm going to say this. Tyreek Hill will become available, and I don't care what anybody says. If he becomes available, best believe Kansas City is going to run and gun for him, and because they know they can't win with the team they have. And Travis Kelce, he can come back, and we will get into that a little bit later. He can come back. That does not mean Travis Kelce is going to be Travis Kelce. So I wish him all the luck in the world. He better have a lot of sex with Taylor Swift if he expects to, jump from what he was this year. Actually, try not to have sex. Become, impotent. You know?
Women weaken legs.
That's it. Yes, as Mickey said. Rock, stay away from the women. Oh, man, what a joke. I think the Jets are a joke. The Associated Press reports that Victor Wembanyama was diagnosed with blood clots in his right shoulder. Wemby will miss the rest of the season, but is beginning treatment in France and is expected to make a full recovery next season. Wemby was averaging 24.3 points per game, 11 rebounds per game, 3.7 assists per game, and a league-leading 3.8 blocks per game this season. ESPN reports that Gregg Popovich will not return this season after being diagnosed with a stroke in November. Popovich is the oldest active NBA coach at 76 years old and is the winningest coach in NBA history with 1,390 wins. The Spurs are 21-27 this season, and Popovich said his NBA future is unclear. Well, first of all, with the Wembanyama thing, I am not surprised this is happening to Wembanyama. Now, I didn't wish this upon him. I know a lot of people liked some of the different stuff that we posted months ago where some people said, he's never been hurt. He's never been out for a significant amount of time. And now this came out, and you can't pick and choose what's going to happen with your body. Blood clots, you don't wish that upon anybody. That can actually kill you. So I feel bad for Wembanyama that this has happened to him. But this has been, and I'll say this again, when you're a big guy like Wembanyama and a guy that has never been injured for a significant amount of time, and then this starts to happen, one thing starts to happen, and then another thing starts to happen, and then another thing starts to happen. I remember, and I'll bring this up because this is a guy that I've brought up many, many times on this show. Yao Ming was a player that was drafted by the Houston Rockets, and I'll remember it like it was yesterday. Now, obviously, he was 300 pounds and he was 7'5", and Wembanyama is like 210 pounds soaking wet, and he's long and lengthy. We all know what Wembanyama is. The problem here is when Yao Ming came to the league, he had no injuries, no prior injuries, no foot injuries, no knee injuries. This guy was a successful basketball player over there in China. And now when I look at the situation and I see Wembanyama, he was another player that came into the league from France, never had injuries. He's been playing professional basketball in France since he was 14 years old. It's a different game now. And basketball, with obviously the opportunities to train year-round and have all these different things here in the United States to help you grow as an athlete, it's a different sport. But again, Wembanyama is 7'5", 7'4", whatever size he is, whatever you want to argue. He's 7'5", and a guy that's very lengthy, has no weight on him, has stilt legs. And I'll say it again. I'm not. This had nothing to do with his ankles, his legs, his knees, his elbows, or any of that magnitude. These are blood clots. Blood clots never go away. Anybody that knows anything about blood clots, they never go away. So this guy is what? 21 years old, 22 years old, and he already has blood clots. And again, for all you people out there that like attacking me on social media, I am not trying to say that I want Wembanyama and his career to not flourish. I want to see the kid flourish. I'm not wishing anything upon him. But this is worrisome when you know a 21-year-old kid, a 20-year-old kid is getting blood clots. And now he comes back next year and he's going to have a speedy recovery. What's next for the kid? I mean, seriously, is he going to have knee problems? Is his ankles going to go on him? This has been a problem for Steph Curry. Steph Curry came into the league. He was 6'2.5", and people said his size and his problem with his size is not going to work. He's not going to be a shooting guard in the NBA. He's too small. Well, then they moved him to the point guard position, and then he had ankle problems for how many years? 4 years before he really developed and became the player that some people believed he was going to be, coming from Davidson and taking his team to the Final Four. This is a different position. If I was a Spurs fan, I would be worried. You just gave up a significant amount. Oh, maybe not as much as you would have thought, but you gave up a certain amount of a certain amount of players for a guy like Fox. Now you thought, hey, You got Fox and you have Wembanyama. Maybe 2 years from now, finish the season strong with them this year, and then next year you go all out and you try to build this team around these two players. Now you have to worry. Fox wanted to go to the Spurs because he wanted to play for Popovich. Well, guess what? Popovich might not be there anymore. He might retire because of his situation with his stroke. And I want to get into the Popovich thing too in a second. But you would have to worry now as an organization because you put in all your eggs in these baskets in the Aaron Fox move and Wembanyama being drafted as high as he was. Now, I'm not saying he shouldn't have been drafted. This guy is a phenomenal player, averaging 24, 11, and 3 and 3.8 blocks. He's a phenomenal player. If I was an organization, I was running this organization, I would be worried if I was this organization after the blood clot thing. Now, as far as the Popovich story, I'm going to tell you guys this right now, and I'm going to get into this because we have a new segment called Dial It Up, and I have something to get into the Popovich thing, so I'm not going to throw it under the bus because I want to use this for the segment. I would say that Gregg Popovich's career as the Spurs head coach is over. When you hear that he is out for the rest of the season and he had a stroke, this only tells me that now that Wembanyama is out, he's going to sit out for the rest of the season. This would piss off a guy like De'Aaron Fox, who wanted to be traded. Sacramento is a borderline playoff team right now, as far as I'm concerned, over there in the Western Conference. Borderline. I don't know if they make it, but they're a borderline playoff team. Now De'Aaron Fox is going to a team that's 21 and 27. No more Wembanyama. How bad is this team going to be? Well, everybody's going to say, well, they're going to get a high draft pick. They'll get a top 10 pick, and they could build around De'Aaron Fox and Wembanyama and whoever they bring in at number 5 or number 6 or wherever they're drafting. To me, the fact that Gregg Popovich might be done as the head coach over there with the Spurs tells me that where do they go when it comes to that coaching position? And De'Aaron Fox wanting to go there because of Gregg Popovich tells me that is he going to be happy? Is he going to sign that extension? That's the thing. Did he sign the extension yet? Was it signed?
Nope.
It wasn't signed. So if De'Aaron Fox hasn't signed yet, why would he sign if Wembanyama's going to have injuries and he wanted to go there to win a title over there with the Spurs with Gregg Popovich? And by the way, what has Gregg Popovich won since Tim Duncan's retirement? Nothing. So I'm sitting here right now. If I was a Spurs fan, I would be upset because they didn't get that extension with De'Aaron Fox now. Gregg Popovich could be out. Wembanyama could be out for a significant amount of time. Nobody knows about blood clots. You don't know if he'll be back next year. You don't know if he'll be back in 2 years.
They can last forever.
Yeah.
It
So-
sucks, and we've seen it with a lot of athletes.
Yeah. So
you
if
just
I
don't know if they're going to come back or not.
100%, Joba, I agree with you totally. If I was De'Aaron Fox right now, I'm not signing that extension. I'm going to free agency. There is no way I'm going to be sitting pat knowing that there's no guarantees with Wembanyama and there's no guarantees with Gregg Popovich. So if I was him, I would absolutely go to free agency and who gives me the most money. Even though we can get the most money from the Spurs, I still think go to free agency and see what's offered to you in the open market.
Yeah, and also you look at Popovich when it comes to awareness of him, like in the real world too, or awareness of the players in the real world. Like he's a human before he's a coach, and I think he's going to take that into account as well. And basketball, you don't see it as much like you do in football, where you sometimes see the coaches coach from the booth. They'll call plays from the booth. Like I don't think you have that same kind of effect in basketball, which could change his entire coaching style too. The way he likes to be assertive, he likes to. Especially on defense. If you botch anything on defense, he's screaming at you. And him now suffering a stroke, there's going to be conditions that go by that. Will he want to coach that same kind of way? Will he adjust if he wants to keep coaching? Will be another question. He already obviously stepped away from Team USA. Coach K's doing that now, and maybe the NBA is another step for him. Or again, he's going to have to change his whole coaching style. As far as Wemby, yeah, it's definitely scary. Joba, you were mentioning it too. Like those blood clots might not go away. I don't know if we've seen it in a player like this big either. I know Scoops in our private chats messaging Chris Bosh, but that was towards the end of his career, and Wemby's even he's 5 inches higher than he is. So.
Chris Bosh was 32 years old or 33 years old when he had blood clots, and Wembanyama is 21 or 20 years old. I mean, that's a huge difference. Mm-hmm. This guy is he hasn't even come close to his prime. You're in your prime at 26, 27. That's 5 years, 6 years from now. And this guy already has blood clots. It's a shame. It really is. I'm not saying I'm hoping bad for him. But this is a bad sign. This is not a good sign when you hear blood clots.
Yeah, somebody that young, somebody that tall, with that kind of body type, we haven't seen the effects like this because again, it's a very rare circumstance as it is. Like most people in the world, not even just athletes, most people in the world are not 7'3" and that type of body type as it is. So, and a lot of the most that do have that kind of height is they're in countries that aren't as developed medically speaking. So I think that dealing with that, like you're dealing with a circumstance. Now he's French, so they got the money, but like they're dealing with circumstances where they're not going to know right away. And I think for that reason, you do have to be concerned both for his life and for his career going forward. It's this generational talent he's supposed to be.
Well, no, and that's the tough part too. And and Fish brings up David Cohn, and he kind of had he had an auxiliary aneurysm in his but then they removed like the vein out of his thigh and then like did some other stuff, and you just don't know how it's going to react. And in our thread with Bad Thoughts, I think he's right in the aspect that they're still going to get guys to play with Wemby just because of what he is.
Of
But
course.
it's you really don't know this too, and like and close to home too. We had obviously a great college football player in Tommy Frazier, but he had blood clots in his calves and never. He could have played at the next level, but they kept coming back, and it kept affecting him in ways where you just don't know the long term if you have this already. And especially, Errol, you bring up a great point where you talk about being a 22-year-old kid where and usually these type of things happen more in the legs than necessarily your upper extremities. And obviously, none of us are doctors; we don't know. But you've kind of seen how there's been a little bit of repercussions on these certain things. And at the end of the day, yeah, is he a phenomenal athlete? He's a generational talent, yeah, but more so he's a human being.
Right.
He's a son, he's a brother, and those things are more important. And sometimes with sports and being these guys that they are, sometimes that gets kind of put on the back burner, which it shouldn't, because these are the conversations that we have. But also it's a very valid conversation. Be like, how is this going to affect his career moving forward? And it sucks to say that for somebody that is such a generational talent, and has worked his butt off and has been at the highest level since he's been a teenager, really. So it's really tough to even try to predict kind of what's going to happen and how they're going to move forward with the organization and what they are trying to build around Wemby. And at the end of the day, I really honestly think that it's where you got to look out for him first and foremost, because if you put the sport ahead of him as health and a human, then I think you can get lost a little bit. And that's obviously my just personal opinion and seeing things like that. So it's going to be kind of hard to navigate that aspect of it. And if hopefully, fingers crossed for him and his family and all of his well-being, that this is kind of a one and done thing. But we've seen this kind of linger on in people's careers, so that's just hard to think about, and how you're going to navigate through the whole realm of what this is going to be through his career.
Yes.
Fish.
All right. So, guys, look, we have one of the guys who is going to be one of the greatest players in the league. First team All NBA defense his first year, rookie of the year. He was on his way to probably be either a first or second team All NBA player this year, probably second team at center. Definitely all defensive player, probably defensive player of the year. Someone was mentioning it to me. I don't know if it was one of you guys or a friend of mine that put down a bet that it was at like minus 3,500 that they'll get Wemby at a defensive player of the year, and and they put like 10 grand on it, and like 5 minutes later the news came out that he was out for the season, because it was such a sure bet that Wemby was going to be defensive player of the year before this happened. Who knows what's going to happen? You said it, Errol. Yao Ming had the foot problem. He was so big, he never really healed. Wemby's a really nice knee bender. If you watch him athletically, he gets lower to the ground. He seems to be a little bit more nimble than Yao was. Yao was a little bit more of a statue, but was great at what he did. It was a different game back then, playing like that. Today you can't. And Wemby does have the body for today's game, but you worry when you're that tall and that lanky. Someone just lands on you wrong, and that leg is going to
Okay,
snap like a
so you brought up the lengthiness and very nimble or whatever the hell you were using, but guess what? Mitchell Robinson was that too, and Mitchell Robinson's nowhere close to the size of Wembanyama. When Mitchell Robinson came into the league, he was thin, he was very nimble, and he had the jumping ability. But what has Mitch dealt with over the last couple of years? Injuries with his leg, his ankle, his calf, and this guy. I remember he put on some weight, and Wembanyama is expected to put on more weight on his body. If he wants to last in the NBA, he's going to have to put weight on, just like Mitch. And this guy's 7'5". If he puts on 30 pounds of muscle, 30 pounds. And usually that's what happens as you get older. Joba, you know this. As you get older, you get stronger, you get bigger, you start working out your weight. It happens. So that would worry me right now that this guy is not even close to his prime, and he already has blood clots, and he hasn't even gone through that major injury with his ankles or his calf or his knee. This would worry me. Now, I'm reading all these different comments, especially this guy, Bad Thought Studio. I don't know who he is, but thanks for joining us, Bad. And you're saying people are going to want to go and play over there. If I was a superstar player and I see that this kid has blood clots, and I know that Coach Popovich might not be back, the questions here lie. Why would I go there when I can go and play for the Lakers and Luka Doncic? Why would I go there when I could go and play with, Karl Anthony Towns and Jalen Brunson? You know, there are other teams. How about the Rockets right now? How young they are and how talented they are. Why would I go there when I know I can go to another team and have a better chance of winning, when I know I'm not sure about Wembanyama's health and moving forward where Gregg Popovich is going to be? And he's 76. That's the only reason why I'm saying this. This is worrisome if I was a player that wants to go and play for the Spurs.
I
That's
think
all
it
I'm
does.
saying.
I think it does change the trajectory a little bit of the organization, and you guys can agree with me if I'm wrong, because you're having a staple in Pop and what he's done and what he's meant for that organization, and bringing in Wemby and having a guy like Pop and having the guys around him that he has on his staff and everything. But I think it does a little bit change the trajectory. I don't know if it changes it completely, honestly. Um, I don't think it changes because you really don't know like kind of what's going to happen. But I do think there might be a little bit like second thoughts, a little bit maybe in the trajectory of kind of how they're going. So yeah, I don't know if it's going to like change it completely.
If I was the Aaron Fox, I'm not signing that contract. If I was him, I would not sign that contract. I would go to free agency and see what's out there. I would worry right now if I was the Aaron Fox, because the first thing he said, I get to play for Coach Popovich, a champion, a 5-time champion, one of the greatest of all time in his eyes. I don't think he is, but in his eyes. And then watching Wembanyama in the same aspect of the same season, he goes down for the rest of the season with blood clots. When you know blood clots are significant, if I was De'Aaron Fox, I'm not signing that. I'm telling you, I'm all about winning. That's why he didn't want to stay in Sacramento. They weren't about winning. Are the Spurs really all about winning right now? With Gregg Popovich coming saying that he's uncertain where his career is going and if he's even coming back? I mean, how about you, Nick? What are your thoughts to it?
I mean, I'm up in the air, dude. I think the guy's a great player.
No question.
I obviously, and just reading through the comments, Bad Thoughts Studio also, the risk of him staying healthy for a year is worth it because of his generational talent. We've never seen someone like this ever in the NBA. I mean, but he's not playing, right? The best ability is availability, right? So if he's not playing, you don't know what you're going to get out of him. And if he can't stay healthy for a year, are you going to be able to, is that ship going to sail, or what's the deal? And then like you said, Popovich is out. Like it's going to be a completely different dynamic to the Spurs and really, I mean, sadly, I mean, we're seeing blood clots now more common in a lot of different sports, not just the NBA, but we've seen it in soccer, we've
Football.
seen it in football as well. So, hopefully, the medical industry field, whatever, can get him back on the court as soon as possible. And obviously, we want him to be healthy. But as far as like a player on another team wanting to sign there, it would be questionable for me. Because obviously, yeah, you want to be around greatness and you want to learn from him. Even if he isn't playing, you still could learn a lot from him while he's on the bench. But at the same time, you want to win. And if he isn't playing, chances of you winning are not as good.
But Goody, he's also a kid. What are you going to learn from a kid? The kid's still learning. He's still figuring it out.
You can learn something from everybody.
No,
I'm not. Person in the room. You're not in the right room.
You're right. Okay, so you have a veteran player like Jimmy Buckets. Jimmy Buckets becomes and he's not. He just signed a 3-year deal with the Golden State Warriors. But let's say he became a free agent. He says, "I want to go and play with Wembanyama." All right, fine. He goes and plays and he signs with the Spurs. What is Jimmy Buckets going to learn from a 20-year-old kid that's still trying to figure out who he is as an NBA player? And I understand you can learn something from everybody. He's still a kid. And if I was him, and I was Wembanyama right now, a person that you saw what he did in the All-Star game. You saw how much he wanted his team to play defense and stuff like that. It's worrisome that the last game he played as an NBA player was an All-Star game. That would worry me too. I mean, the NBA is trying to figure out how to protect their players and make sure that the All-Star game's more interesting and more fun to watch. And your best young player goes down in an All-Star game. So, I mean, that's worrisome too. That's something that if I'm looking at the game and listen, bad thoughts, you're absolutely right. You want to go over there. If you're a player right now, you can make millions and millions of dollars wherever you go. Would you rather go there? Or would you want to go to, let's say if there's money available, to the Knicks and play with Karl Anthony Towns and OG Anunoby and Jalen Brunson? I mean, come on. Let's be honest here. How about the Greek Freak?
And you're in New York.
Yeah. How about if the Greek Freak gets traded to OKC next year? How about would you want to go and play with the Greek Freak and Shai and Williams? Or you want to go over there and hope that Popovich comes back and Wembanyama's 100% healthy? To me, if I was De'Aaron Fox, I'm not signing that contract. If I was a free agent that wants to win, and he's going to get money no matter where he goes. He's not going to get as much, but he's going to make money. I'm not signing with the Spurs. That's just my opinion. That's my take on it. So,
you're entitled to that, right? Like that's your opinion. But we'll see what happens when the time comes, and if the pen meets the paper, and
it's all about money, as we all know.
100%. Well, unfortunately that's how the world operates. It's all about the dollar.